Oh, hi. Today I want to know, where's all the petrol gone? I'm Cross Drayline and welcome to A Wonderful Waste of Time, and today we'll be talking about why I've had to hear people angrily beeping their car horns every time I've opened my windows for almost a full week now. If you're not from the UK or you're incredibly cut off from any form of news because everyone can't stop hyping the situation up, everyone's gone a bit nuts about fuel. Fuel. Currently, people are queuing up just in an attempt to get into a petrol station and filling up any kind of canister they can to hoard just that little bit more. And the big bajimba says it might go on till December.
Is Rishi Sunak right in saying that these problems, these delays, could go on until Christmas, or is he wrong?
I think what you're seeing,
just right or wrong,
is I think Rishi is right invariably.
Right, so he's right.
Says. So what the heck is going on? How did all this happen? And how do we quench this vehicular thirst if the old watering hole really has run dry? It all started when it was announced that Britain's short of HGV drivers, which means there's less coming and going of regular deliveries of everyday goods across England, Scotland and Wales, but not Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK but is not part of Great Britain and is not having these problems. So if you live there, don't start panic buying just in case. I'll explain why in this video. This all culminated in there being less regular deliveries of supermarket products, household bulk items, and the one that everyone's decided to fixate on, fuel. Fuel. The Road Haulage Association says that the UK is short of about 100,000 drivers, which sounds friggin' nuts, and begs the question, how many drivers are there supposed to be if there's that many missing? Some of the number is supposedly from the pandemic, but not a lot in the grand scheme of things, as there were supposedly already 60,000 drivers missing. But the larger part of the problem is considered to be my least favourite portmanteau, Brexit. No, what? No way, huh? No, what? Nah. As it turns out, leaving the EU single market, which makes it easier for people to move between different countries, also makes it more difficult for people whose job is to pass through different countries to pass through different countries. There are also new immigration laws stopping the many drivers from other countries from working here. The value of the pound has dropped in comparison to the euro, alongside tax changes which have made it less valuable to work here. And new proposed checks on incoming goods will cost international drivers both time and money, which seems to have left us a few pumps short of a load. It's almost as if all those people who were coming over here and taking our jobs were actually coming over here and doing jobs that nobody really wanted anyway, and potentially coming over here and helping us acquire all the basic items that we need that some people seem to think are just spunked out of a magic portal round the back of Tesco. I'm sure there are many other factors, but there's only so much I can look into, as not every piece of information is made publicly available. But there's one thing that we can all see, and that's that people popping off isn't particularly helpful. Clearly, the lack of deliveries to petrol stations and supermarkets is having a toll on people mentally. I personally saw this firsthand when everything I ordered for lunch from Sainsbury's last week was replaced with something slightly worse than what I'd asked for. My vegetable lasagna became a ricotta-filled cannelloni. My vegan sweet and sour chicken, now a vegan chicken tikka masala. And my actual chicken tikka and sweet potatoes, now a Thai green curry. We're all making sacrifices. But seriously, you can't swap chicken tikka for Thai green curry. I know some dumb butts think that all curry is curry, but those are completely different things. And anything that full of coriander has no place on these streets. I'm gangped gang! Currently they're talking about sending the army in, which would be to help with the driving side of things, not with the petrol station side of things, as some people seem to have misunderstood. Because what are the army going to do about people shouting and assaulting people? Start shouting and assaulting people, but in a beret? This would mean that potentially some of the empty driver's seats could be filled with soldiers, or that the army could in some way help train new drivers because they use plenty of HGVs themselves. But this wouldn't solve the problem anytime soon. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps has said that it's a job typically filled with
A
99% white men
male
with an average
profession,
age of 55.
Average age 55.
But that frames the situation as if young people, women and people of colour aren't willing to do the job, which sounds like a load of bullshit. It seems like it might be a job mostly done by older white men because it's thought of as a job that's mostly done by older white men, both by people who want to go into it as a career and, more importantly, by the people who are hiring people to do that job. And if the person hiring someone for that job has a preconceived notion of who should fulfill that place, then that can kind of get in the way of things. So not only should there never be anything standing in the way of people doing a job they're qualified for, it seems much like many other things, it's people stopping people. The people hiring them to do the job, or other people talking them out of doing the job, whether that's shaming them or concern for them. So while it might be statistically true that the job's filled with a certain criteria of person, we should make it sound like it can only be filled by that criteria of person. Because there's absolutely no reason why other people shouldn't feel entirely comfortable in applying for that same job. Because if people do make it sound like there's an issue, then it becomes an issue, which is incredibly fitting for the rest of this episode. So while we might be short on drivers, the larger problem might be that we're a little short on empathy for the people who could fill those positions, but they've been marginalised before they've even had the chance. Or they simply can't keep doing the job when Britain has chosen to change things, and is for some reason shocked when the rest of the world isn't jumping at the chance to help us solve self-created problems. We're not short on fuel either. That's also a self-created problem. There might be less people to transport it, but it still exists. And one thing that's definitely going to make it more difficult for them is to increase the amount that's needed. It's a pretty simple concept. If you said you ate an apple every day because you've just got to keep those doctors away, and I said I could bring you 7 apples every Monday, then everything would be fine. But if you start wigging the fuck out and eat all 7 apples on the first day because you don't think I'm going to bring you any more even though I said I definitely would, then you shouldn't get any more apples, you greedy bastard. Even worse, if you start eating all the apples that I brought for other people, then everyone's going to be pissed and nobody's going to get their daily apples. And that's how the doctors win. A lot of petrol stations at the moment have way less fuel than usual, but it's only because people are buying more fuel than usual. And all the people who are buying extra just in case they run out are making them run out. Meaning that other people have to go and join in. Not because they're worried that it's going to run out, because they're worried that some greedy dickhead's going to take it all. They've taken the concept of a full shortage and made it into an actual full shortage. And if you don't know what that means, let me explain. The idea of full shortages or artificial scarcity isn't unusual at all. In fact, you see it all the time. It just isn't usually used for something that's considered essential. There are clothes, shoes, games, collectible decorative items, records, book covers, drinks, fucking crisps and chocolate bars that have all been considered limited edition. And while it would be nice to only consider a seller saying something's limited edition to mean we're just trying something new out, or we could only make so many of these, or we made less of these so it feels more special to the people who get one. That's mostly bullshit. The last one might be true for some stuff, but the majority of the time it's just a thinly veiled threat that says, if you don't buy one of these now, you're not going to get one. You're going to miss out. Playing on this fear of regret, or fear of missing out as people said 4 years ago and your mum says now, just means that they're not selling something based on it being good or desirable, but based on it potentially becoming desirable later on and you not being able to acquire it. It also creates a concept of exclusivity, meaning it might go up in value later and you'd get to lord it over people and feel all very special about yourself. It's pretty gross, but it works. It's kind of a grey area and it varies massively in its acceptability, but it's happening all the time. I'd be hard pressed to say that it's extortionate for Walkers or Frito-Lays to keep bringing out limited edition crisps every year that don't taste anything like they're supposed to. It is a load of bollocks, but ultimately it's just a bag of crisps, so they're not making you spend that much money, even if they do make a lot of money out of it. And I can't really complain about records doing it, considering I'm a complete sucker for that shit, if you couldn't tell from half my record collection being in shot. I like it when something comes on brightly coloured vinyl, or comes with an art book, or some stickers, or an exclusive t-shirt. There's an Atmosphere record that's cover is just line work, and it came with a pack of crayons so that you could fill it in yourself. And I really want that. I would never fill it in because that would ruin how much it's worth. But I want to own it. Why? It's stupid, but I love it. So I'm happy to spend a little more on something I already wanted in a cool alternative package. But I hate being on the other side of it, where there's a couple of albums I really want to own, but they're all being sold for at least £200 second hand. And then again on the flip side, I have a record that I bought for about £20 that I recently saw is listed on the record selling website Discord for nearly £600. And flipped for one final time, I'm now scared to play that record, because every time I do, it will take off the price that I paid for it in the first place off its resale value, which is ridiculous, and I have no intention of selling it anyway. And don't even get me started on collectibles. The concept of blind boxes where you have to keep buying the same thing over and over again because you can't see what's inside, just in an attempt to get the one thing that you want. They've essentially become Pokemon cards at this point, where one thing in a set is rarer and worth more than the rest, so it doesn't cost the price of a single packet to acquire it, it costs however many packets you had to buy to get that one thing. This is straying a little bit. It's all a bit excusable when it's stuff you buy for fun, when it's luxury items, but when it's something essential, when it's something that everybody currently needs, it's pretty disgusting, even if it wasn't done on purpose. Much like when everyone was freaking out over toilet paper and dried pasta near the start of the pandemic, and everyone was scared to face the horror of eating tin spaghetti and walking around with poopy bum bums. Those two things aren't exactly the same. It's exactly the same thing now. The concept of petrol's rarity is making people go and buy petrol, which is in itself creating a rarity. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And while if everyone stopped buying unnecessary amounts of petrol this would be less of a problem, it would still be a problem, because there's always going to be a few dickheads who go and do it anyway and cause a problem. When you got a bunch of fucking numpties showing up with jerry cans to take fuel that they don't need, and even people trying to fill up water bottles, pretty sure that the plastic the water bottles are made out of will quickly decompose with petrol in them, so fingers crossed that we get a follow-up about how that didn't work out. Then we've sort of caged ourselves in, where people need to go and join the queue so they don't end up with nothing, which only further increases the problem. And we're at the point now where people are struggling to take kids on school trips, because if someone's put in charge of a group of children and takes them to fucking Legoland or whatever, probably somewhere more educational, but then starts running out of fuel and can't get into a petrol station because there's a queue of 30 pump chumps holding their delicious car beverage, then all those kids are just stuck in fucking Windsor, which is dangerously close to Slough. Sorry, Slough. And it's only so long before the teachers run out of money and they all have to head back into Legoland for a life of panning for pretend gold to exchange for Lego bricks to eat, and ultimately becoming a child pirate. The point is, most people probably don't need the amount of fuel they've been buying, and most of them probably know that. But honestly, I kind of understand why they're doing it. Have you ever ended up on one of those knockoff websites that sell shirts that are probably made by children and cloned electronics that are also probably made by children, and whatever item you're looking at just so happens to be part of the daily deal? Come on down and get your chance to buy this piece of shit that you don't actually want at a fraction of the price. But you better act quickly because you're almost out of time and they've all almost been sold. And you know it's all bullshit. You can smell it through the screen. No one's buying them, and that deal's on every day. And even then, it's still not cheap enough for how little it costs them to produce it in the first place, because they're not paying the children who actually make it. Stop buying dumb shit from disreputable people. Some people must fall for it, otherwise they wouldn't bother doing it, but I doubt most people do. So why can you see the holes in that, but you can't see it when your mate Davo, who shouts at women out of his van and spends all of his earnings straight down the pub, says, "Yeah, from what I've heard, on the streets." there's no fucking petroleums. So if we don't start race driving to the local jet garage and threaten to bludgeon people until they let us fill your car boot with volatile liquids, then by next week I won't be able to drive my van and shout harassment at the ladies. Or how about when your posh friends JP and Tarquin have found some time in between shopping for little dangly gold earrings and making women feel uncomfortable by forcing conversation in the queue at Joe and the Juice to tell you,
"No, seriously, bro, from what all my friends in the industry told me, the poors are stealing all the car coffee, and though I mostly ride my cheap and easily affordable to everyone Brommy that cost me £2,000, how am I to get to Ascot for Daddy's birthday surprise man pony show and all-you-can-eat pheasant buffet?" You know people are idiots, and you know that newspapers are going to sensationalise any little story and make it sound like the world's about to end. But there's still some little itchy feeling in the back of your brain telling you this is going to be a problem and you need to solve it now. And that's what's actually driving the problem, probably more so than the lack of drivers, because they've said that that's been going on for years. And if that was the actual problem, then why didn't that start years ago rather than a week ago? So now we know a bit more about the situation and how people are involved in it, we need to talk about how this keeps happening recently in the exact same way. And it starts with something I feel like I can't say enough. Newspapers, especially in this country, are not about news. They're not full of unbiased wisdom that they've just learnt that will somehow help you. Your life isn't going to get better because some prick has dedicated their life to harassing people who work at Buckingham Palace so they can tell you the real reason why the Queen and Meghan Markle just don't get on. You might want that information, but you don't need it. It's not going to change your life, and it doesn't matter. And the same thing goes for on how they report daily events. You need the actual information, not the opinionated vitriol that's around it. They're entertainment companies with articles that are often complete conjecture and filled with about as much useful information as if you'd accidentally picked up a cabbage instead. They're just magazines that are lying to you about being magazines and pretending to be magic spies that have secret insider information, which will often just turn out to be the opinion of the people that write for it, or often the people who own it. They sell concepts, taking a small thing that someone says and making it into a big problem they can scare you with so you keep buying the newspaper. And that's exactly what they've done now. Someone said, we're a bit short on HGV drivers and it would be good if people who wanted to do that job could apply to do that job. And they've chosen to say, Britain in fuel crisis, foreign workers abandon post-Brexit Britain and take our petrol with them. It's bollocks. That doesn't mean that I think that all journalists are backwards scoundrels, and since I compared them to magazines, it doesn't mean that I think that magazines are awful too. Magazines are often written about a specific topic and by people that care about that specific topic. If anything, I think they probably have more journalistic integrity than most newspapers. This is a copy of Edge magazine from a few years ago that I kept because it has 16 pages dedicated to the game Red Dead Redemption 2. Within everything that's written about the game, it just contains interviews with people that worked on the game and information about the game. What magazines do well that newspapers don't is they make it clear what is information and what is a review, what is the opinion of someone that works for the magazine. Newspapers blur the lines between the two and combine the story with the opinion of the writer or the newspaper to lead you towards having the same opinion as them. And I know there are many genuinely good writers at newspapers who find a story that's just interesting and they write about it, maybe tweaking it a little bit for entertainment, but not quite blowing it out of the water with dynamite like a newspaper headline article. I like those writers and I want to be more like those writers when I make this show. Especially John Ronson, I kind of wish I was more like John Ronson. And when I make this show, while it's very researched, it also contains my opinion. The difference being, I'm not pretending that those parts aren't just my opinion. When I say, people should buy electric cars, that's not information, that's opinion, and it's obvious because of the wording. But newspapers are kind of like walking into a music store. Everything in the window is just pop stars are doing whatever's popular to keep a fan base and make money. Sure, there's a few that are genuinely good and worthwhile, but a lot of the time you have to go to the back of the store and find the artist with an actual genre. That's how you find the stuff that's good that you really want, and the stuff that you'll remember later on. But some people don't want that. They don't want the niche stuff, they just want whatever's popular. So they pick up whatever's on the first set of shelves and never make it to the back of the store. Plenty of people buy newspapers because they don't want to do any heavy reading. They just want to know the quick stories so that they can get a little bit of information and join in on conversations and have an opinion, which there's no shame in. If you're going to do that, you can't just start making big stupid decisions based on that. If your one source of information, whether that be newspapers, fucking Twitter, or right here on YouTube, if someone says something a bit extreme, maybe consult a second source of information. If you went to a doctor because your ribs hurt a little, and they said it's because you've actually been a dolphin this whole time and you should return to the sea immediately, you'd go and see a second doctor. Of course, by that point you'd have land drowned, but maybe that's a bad example. Before the fuel fiasco, we had the pasta pandemonium and the trouble in Toilet Paper Town, which led to a lot of toilet paper tantrums, where people were arguing in the aisles and fighting old people for some squares of paper that you literally smear with fecal matter and throw away. Side note, there was a time where people wiped their asses with newspapers. Just saying. People got into their heads that one of the most common symptoms of the virus was diarrhea, so they started stocking up on toilet paper, though in reality it's one of the most uncommon symptoms. Then a few weeks later, someone pointed out that there were a lot more people buying all the dried pasta because they were expecting to be home a lot more and it would be difficult to just keep going to the supermarket. So of course, within a few days of that observation, the shelves were completely pastaless and people were struggling to even get a pack of penne. Not me though, I was hoarding pasta way before any of this happened. I have a problem. People were even buying all of the canned food, leading to pictures of old people staring wistfully at empty shelves because someone bought all the peas pudding, and old people are the only ones supposed to be eating that anyway. And why did all this happen? Oh, it's because people took a minor shortage, freaked out, and turned it into a major problem. Everyone essentially picked up an axe, started chopping into the side of a tree, and then went, "Oh no, the tree's fallen down." If everyone had just stopped and thought about being a little bit more considerate of everyone else and just bought the same amount of stuff that they normally buy, or even buying a little bit less so that other people have more opportunity to buy stuff, then that minor problem could have stayed minor. Instead, it just snowballed, and all the people that were putting themselves at risk working in supermarkets were just having more shit dumped on top of them. The workers that people needed to get any food and toilet paper were still having to help people when they were making their jobs insane and miserable. Much like how people in the current situation who work in petrol stations are having to deal with people being aggressive and picking fights with them. If you're a customer who was part of creating the problem, then you can't just start attacking someone who's the only reason you get any petrol to begin with. You can't just shit on the floor of a restaurant, then give it a bad review on TripAdvisor because someone shit on the floor. You did it. You shit on the floor. So what can we do about all this? Well, short term, you can stop buying things you don't fucking need and give the people who stock it a chance to replenish without causing further problems. I do think that once people calm down, it'll get better. In fact, since I started making this, it seems a little bit less chaotic, so hopefully the initial panic has worn off. More long term, I guess they need drivers, so if you want to do that, go and do that. Though I feel like I need to point out the irony that if they've got less drivers, that means that they're using less petrol to deliver the petrol, meaning that they in fact have more petrol. It would also be worth saying this wouldn't happen if people had electric cars. There wouldn't be any distribution issues for something that you can do at home. No one would feel the need to panic charge. Some people would try to argue that this would have led to a shortage in the power supply, but that's just not real because this whole situation wouldn't have started in the first place. And if we spent all of our time and resources on trying to generate electricity instead of petroleum, we would have more electricity. And here's a weird thought. Petrol companies have been losing money thanks to hybrid and electric cars fortunately becoming more popular. So convincing people to panic buy not only makes them a lot of money quickly, but it also makes them seem like a more essential service. I don't actually believe that it was on purpose, but it has worked out that way. Personally, I'm very happy to see more people getting on board with electric cars. There's only so much stuff in the world that we can burn, but the sun, wind and moving water are potentially infinite, and they don't completely disappear when they're used, so it seems like a no-brainer to start focusing on that. It's better for the environment, it would stop this kind of situation from happening, and the companies that sell petrol are usually complete bastards, so it wouldn't be the worst thing if they stopped making so much money while destroying us all. And to reiterate an earlier point from this section, take anything you read in a newspaper, on a newspaper's website, on YouTube or social media that's focused on reporting news, and scale it back a bit until you find out whether they're accurate or not. If someone says there's going to be a shortage of something, maybe think about whether you actually need that thing. Or maybe the correct response to that situation is to take less of that thing, so that when someone really needs it, they have the opportunity to get the regular amount of it, including you. Because I do not want to see any more pictures of old people staring vacantly at empty shelves because everyone's taken the stuff that they need. I think the real point that needs to be made is, despite all of this making it seem like we're super reliant on petrol and that those companies are important, fuck all of them. They're bad for us, they do a load of shady shit, and they don't really care about any of us in the long run. So while we might be slightly dependent on them now, we're moving towards a future where we're not, and that's a good thing. If all the money that's invested into excavation of fuels, invading territory to steal fuels, and building aquatic fucking jungle gyms was invested into, say, putting solar panels onto the roofs of large industrial warehouses, invested in more wind turbines that could be placed by the side of motorways or on roundabouts, which are also another great place to put solar panels, and making more dams into hydroelectric plants, because people can say that they interrupt the flow of water in river habitats, but not as much as building a fucking wall through them. Come on. Oh, and personal shout out, there's a group of engineers at City University of Hong Kong who are developing a way to use falling water droplets to generate electricity. This country's constantly pissing down. If we invested in that, we could probably power the entire fucking planet. So if this is all still happening when you see this video, don't join in. And if it's over and you feel guilty about having been part of it, assuming you didn't take it too far, it's understandable. If you're the man I heard out of my window shout at another man in an argument about petrol, I hope you break your ankle, you old cunt. I hope you feel guilty, and I'd love to know why it was specifically his ankle. But most importantly, don't do this again. If you see a situation like this approaching, don't get involved, and remind other people that this happened and that this only becomes a problem when we make it a problem. For further research, check out more about that project from City University of Hong Kong. There's an article about it on their website and I've put a link for that in the description. If you haven't already, and at 12 million views plenty of people have, you should watch Simone Yetch convert a Tesla into a pickup. It looks way better than Cybertruck and shows just how versatile the future of electric cars can be. And if you want to know more about how companies sell to you using false shortages, check out Scarcity, I'm deleting this video soon by Coffee Break, which points out how big companies like Amazon use this tactic against you. That's it for this episode. Share it with your friends because they might not be around next time. Scarcity. Scarcity. Oh no! Thanks for watching. This situation's been pretty silly, but it seems to be getting better already. We just don't need it to happen again with something else. If you have any crazy stories about things you've seen at petrol stations during this, please leave a comment. I'd love to hear them. If you like this video, please like this video, and if you want to see more, you should subscribe and turn on the bell. If you have a question I should answer, let me know in the comments, and if you know someone who'd enjoy this video, why not send them a link? Bye.